What a fascinating new perspective on Tesla's legacy. The KI certainly have an appetite for peculiar inventions. The great leader would be overjoyed to apply this new theory to his hands.
In just a few short days following the operation in Fort Shevchenko, Yunru was able to reach the lands of Japan by herself, while their prototype convoy is pushing through the relatively vacant lands of Siberia. Yunru's early arrival has allowed the revolt's main army, which had been hiding at the island of Sakhalin for some time, to proceed with the next step of their plan. Following the defection of their chief scientist and the total loss of their plans for a generational leap, the Chinese leadership has scrapped all offensive plans in the works, assuming a defensive stance as they withdrew most of their forces back into the mainland. Their presence in several conquered nations were reduced heavily as a result, including Japan, albeit to a lesser extent. Most of their forces have either gathered around the major seismic stabilizers so as to maintain a minimum level of control over the nation, or near the few remaining Kanegawa facilities still under their control. But with the Chinese presence on the Pacific now erased completely, the Epsilon seized the opportunity to finally initiate heavy offensives in the region. Many of their operations in East Asia are now being supported by the Epsilon HQ, who had recently completed their subjugation of Australia. Their combined forces have already destroyed several KI assemblies on the coast of South China Sea. The situation in Japan is arguably worse, with reports of Chinese troops outright deserting their posts instead of protecting their prospects. Several facilities affiliated with the revolt in secret were raided as well, and the remaining ones were placed on lockdown by the Chinese after the capture of the Iron Wing. If nothing is done soon, it won't be long before Yuri controls all of Japan. In order to re-establish contact with their allies in the Pacific Front and the KI, Yunru and the revolt's forces have arrived at the Hidaka Sanmyaku in Hokkaido, Japan, one of the last standing KI complexes in the region, though that may not be the case for long, as they are already under siege by a significant detachment of Yuri's forces, which appear to be making a play for the Hokkaido seismic stabilizer. Most of the KI complex has already fallen under the influence of several psychic beacons, and while the stabilizer is still under Chinese control, the deployment of several psychic dominators will change that soon enough. Luckily, the Chinese adapted Allied Tech Center, which contains the crucial workprints of particle collision-based weaponry, still stands. Under the orders of Volknet, the revolt dispatched a strike team to accompany Yunru to the adapted Tech Center, removing the Chinese guarding the outpost as she entered the structure to secure the research. The revolt's main army arrived soon after, preparing to stage a counterattack against the Epsilon forces here, who are using 2 captured comm towers to maintain contact with the rest of their army. Retaking these would give them a brief window to hack into Yuri's network for intelligence, as well as delay their attacks on Japan. The psychic beacons in the area complicates that plan. But fortunately for the revolt, this particular base is home to the hidden blueprints of the future tank X-0, presumed destroyed and lost by the Chinese following their invasion of Japan 2 years prior. A small amount of these unmanned tanks were in truth preserved by those working with Yunru's researchers, and have even had a limited number of new variants developed in secret. While the cyborg prototype research was lost, these fully automated tanks fulfill the exact same niche against mind control, and Volknet made sure to utilize this advantage to its max, dismantling several psychic beacons with barely any losses. The addition of the Freed Pacific Front forces gives them a new edge in this 3-way battle, allowing them to punch their way to the seismic stabilizer before the Epsilon could destroy it. What remained of the Chinese base was overtaken by the revolt. With an MCV now in their hands, Volknet was able to accelerate their production, eventually overpowering the remaining Epsilon opposition. The comm towers were captured thereafter, providing the revolt with the latest intelligence on Epsilon activity. Intelligence that, regrettably, confirms the revolt's suspicion regarding Yuri's true plan, a plan that has only been accelerated due to the continuous Allied attacks in the southern hemisphere. All would be well if the reorganized Allied forces can succeed in their campaign against Yuri. But if they don't, the revolt must make preparations for the worst. The drums of war thunder across the threads of time, and the paradox marches ever onwards. Despite the defeat of his navy, Yuri remains committed to his quest to seize the weather controller. The resources on hand barely allows for the construction of one more psychic amplifier in the Americas, which Yuri has hastily deployed in the Amazon rainforests of Brazil. And if that fails, 2 tactical nuke silos to ensure the destruction of the research base. The terrain makes it difficult for the Allies to conduct a large-scale attack on the area, and while the Chrono Legion is more than capable of handling the task, Siegfried has expressed concerns over letting any more Chrono backpacks fall into Epsilon hands through mind control. Several Chrono Legionnaires have already gone missing in their battles. Given Yuri's intellect, a reverse engineering of the device isn't out of the realms of possibility. But fear not, for the Allies still have many cards up their sleeves. Special Agent Tanya and Tomakawa Norio, an unusual pairing, but one just as effective as the best the Allies can offer. Sweeping their way through the jungles, the duo successfully destroyed the nuke silos, and before long, the psychic amplifier as well. With the safety of the weather controller secured, nature itself would soon be at the Allied expedition's beck and call, and the timing could not have been more impeccable. With the Midas no longer being a point of concern, the Allies have abolished all plans to maintain battle lines and consolidate hold over Africa, choosing instead to focus entirely on targeted chrono strikes. Even without the Paradox engine, the addition of lightning storms still gives them a way to inflict heavy losses upon the Epsilon. Moreover, the latter appears to be fractured by an internal conflict with the Scorpion Cell. This recent surge of infighting gave the Allies a chance to slip in and take control of several refineries in the African country of Angola, its abundance of ore and vast oil reserves breathing new life into the Allied war machine. Elsewhere in San Juan, Puerto Rico, a large group of US rebels fleeing the psychic amplifier has managed to contact the expedition to request extraction. Being the closest party to the survivors, Norio's Pacific Front loyalists, who have now rejoined the Allies as a newly reformed Boomerang regiment of the expedition, managed to reach and evacuate the Americans before they were routed. With a resurgence of manpower and resources, the Allies are more than comfortable to proceed with their next objective, a massive naval base in Kaapstad, South Africa, which, according to intel acquired from the Pacific Front, appears to be a major communication hub for the Epsilon. This is how Yuri's forces were able to coordinate their global attacks, using these specialized comm towers to relay vital information across the world. Capturing it would allow the Allies to locate Yuri's whereabouts, so that they may bring a long-awaited end to his tyranny. Chrono strikes alone won't have any effect against a base of this size, however, necessitating the support of the Allied Navy, which is now heading towards the base at full throttle. Most Epsilon ports on the coast of West Africa have already been dealt with, leaving little opposition to slow them down. Once the weather controller is fully integrated into the Allied arsenal, such major bases won't pose much of an issue to them as well. Suffice to say, even Yuri is growing visibly desperate at how the situation is developing. Even after the nukes in the Amazon rainforest were destroyed, his forces still wouldn't give up on trying to get the engine out of the skies. And what do you know? They went as far as to convert their last space shuttle in South America into a makeshift nuke. Further proof to the Allies that the Midas is no more. And what's worse, the forces extracted from Puerto Rico, led by Tanya and Norio, easily disabled the crude contraption before it could be deployed. The battle at Cape Town is basically unavoidable at this point. But that aside, there's still the matter with the Scorpion Cell. Rashidi is dead, yes, but martyrdom has only emboldened the spirits of his followers. Even with most of their neurotoxin plants destroyed or captured, the remnants of the Scorpion Cell still refuse to come to heal, and the Bissau amplifier that was supposed to subdue them was taken out by the Paradox engine itself. While the inclusion of psychic dominators in Africa has stemmed the bleeding somewhat, between these two, control over the continent can only be secured through a mass mind control device, but Epsilon's desperate attempts so far have all been met with complete failure. All except one. At Maniema, Zaire, caught in a skirmish between the Cell and the Allies, and recently damaged by the latter's air force, but still standing against all likelihood. Perhaps kept intentionally so by their enemies, as the Allies and the Cell could both benefit from capturing the device, whether to study or to utilize its wide-range mind control effect. The damage it has sustained leaves the activation mechanism unstable, however, and without knowledge on how to repair such a device, the two sides have tacitly redirected their mutual attention onto the psychic beacons nearby, hoping to destroy or capture them to solidify their hold in the region first. One could only wonder how they ever convinced themselves that they could keep the Epsilon away from the amplifier, but the desperate and the downtrodden have always been weak to complacency in their fight for survival. This ill-advised confidence shall be the gateway to their downfall once again. Intent on seizing their last chance to bring the continent back under their heel, Ron is sent forthwith to help restore the amplifier. A sizable Epsilon base is still well and present in the area, but a large portion of their available forces are mind-controlled Americans, which can easily break free should the beacons controlling them be destroyed. A perilous operation by all metrics, but the reward far outweighs the risk. And so the super soldier pressed on, cutting down his foe by the dozen, with each kill empowering him further. Linking up with a nearby outpost, the task force continued their trek towards their objective. Noticing that the Epsilon is making another play for the amplifier, the Scorpion Cell hastened their attacks, even forming a temporary truce with the local allied forces. This unlikely alliance had tipped the scales in their favor, neutralizing several psychic beacons in the outer bases. Before they were able to destroy the rest, however, Ron and his legion of newly mutated brutes had arrived first at the amplifier site. An intense struggle ensued, with both the Allies and the Cell scrambling to shut down the amplifier once and for all. But if there's one thing they'll take away from this fight, it is that one cannot defeat Rom by simply throwing bodies at him. Their improvised alliance made for a lousy offensive, and the disorganized attacks only bolstered Rom's ranks. A costly lesson, one which they'll take with them to the grave. The Epsilon Commando ultimately prevailed against his enemies, reactivating the psychic amplifier. This should come as no surprise to those familiar with the story, but power shifts quicker than one often believes in this world. An amplifier was all Yuri wanted, for an amplifier was all it took. Its signals washed over the Scorpion cell remnants in a uniform tide, dragging their lifeless bodies back into the abyss as eternal servants of the greater will. Their assertion of the psychic amplifier's necessity had been proven correct, as despite the support of several beacons, the amplifier's range had expanded at a much slower rate than expected. No doubt a reflection of the sheer density of enemies in the region, of the countless warriors the cell's been hiding out of sight, their minds slowing down the encroaching waves as their last defiant act. As a result, the number of allied troops that fell to the amplifier was far less than anticipated, but that was always the icing on the cake anyway. What really mattered was the defeat of the Scorpion cell, an outcome that is all but inevitable now. Their reckless plan to seize the amplifier had backfired in an unmitigated disaster. Sooner or later, all of their underground bases will fall under mind control. The only exceptions are those who still possess the means to resist it. The neurotoxins, while lethal if used long-term, are still the most effective countermeasure against mind control. Knowing that to be the case, Malvar and those following him have dedicated what little time they still had to salvage as much neurotoxin as they could. The battle mustn't end here, and these chemicals will be instrumental to the fight to come. As for the allies, who had grown reckless from their recent success, this blunder shall cost them dearly soon enough.
We have a target. Release the swarm.
Watch my six.
Got it, Chief.
We're going in.
Through trials and tribulations, the Allied pilgrimage has finally reached the port city of Cape Town. The entirety of the expedition, the joint forces of what's left of the Allied nations, has gathered for this great battle. At the epicenter of the largest Epsilon base they've encountered thus far are these master spires, the crux of Yuri's intelligence network, and the goal of this mission. With the weather controller now part of their main arsenal, the Allies are in the best position to launch a full-scale attack on the Epsilon fortress, but the fierce resistance has reminded them of just how fragile their advantage really is. The initial boomerang strike force sent to set up a perimeter on Robin Island was overrun and captured with a psychic beacon, and the Vanguard Allied Navy that followed found themselves evenly matched with their Epsilon counterpart, which now boasts the infamous vietsubs they had heard of from the Australians. Several psychic dominators were also spotted, the psionic energies of which could be used to damage the engine directly from afar. Without enough power to initiate a time freeze, the Paradox engine has to delay its appearance until the superweapons are destroyed. Eager to break open the stalemate, the Allied commander himself decided to lead a strike force onto Robin Island, which is now fortified by a large number of mind-controlled Scorpion cells, as well as, to their surprise, several Apocalypse tanks. The fact that these behemoths, the personification of Soviet might, produced all the way back on the other side of the planet, are present in large numbers even here as well. It seems the Reds are truly no more. Luckily for the Allies, their Paladin tank hunters have already proven themselves superior to these old relics, not to mention the flimsy armor of the Scorpion cell units. The outpost was soon retaken, allowing for the deployment of a new weather control device. While the Allied commander withstood the counterattack, the expedition launched a second offensive through the city outskirts, spearheaded by the Southern Cross Division, a reformed strike force comprised of soldiers from the Euro Alliance. Still haven't grasped how to properly store their oil barrels, the Epsilon forces were trampled over like ants, allowing the Allies to set up a second weather controller in the area. Just as they're ready to begin a coordinated assault on the primary base, however, the Allies suddenly received news of an ambush attack by the Epsilon. Prior to the expedition's arrival, a significant portion of the Reshevs had already snuck out of the ports, waiting until this exact moment to reveal themselves in a surprise attack on the engine itself. Their psionic bombardments posed just as big of a threat as the Dominators, forcing the Allies to withdraw their navy in defense of the engine. But the attack on Cape Town shall continue, for the Allies shall offer no quarter today, only a relentless delivery of just punishment. To sidestep the Epsilon naval advantage, additional MCVs were warped in for a land-based assault, forming a unified battle line along the city outskirts. Identifying the Allied commander as the biggest threat, the Epsilon launched a fierce attack on their position, their cloning vats kicking into full production for an endless stream of brutes. The Southern Cross Regiment seized the opportunity to pile on the pressure, tearing through the northern position with lightning storms and Zephyr bombardments. The Psychic Dominators were quickly demolished, allowing the Allied commander to construct their new experimental warp shop, enabling the deployment of several chrono-based support powers. But progress remained difficult, as the Epsilon have constructed a large number of Antares batteries, their most advanced pyrokinetic defense system, outranging even the Prism tanks. Thankfully, the Hailstorm siegecrafts, completed by the Australian PF branch, are finally ready for mass production. Its cryogenic payloads decimated the Epsilon defenses, putting the Allies back on the aggression. Before long, the Allied Navy had returned to assist the battle. Beleaguered on all sides and with no card left to play, the Epsilon defenders didn't take long to capitulate. Moderate casualty for the Allies, but the city is theirs, and the Master Spires have provided them with everything they've been looking for. Antarctica. That's where Yuri's main base of operation is. He's building something big there, a new mass mind control device that far eclipses the psychic beacons and even amplifiers in terms of power and range. While the device is still incomplete, missing a crucial component that is redacted in the files, there is no telling how much time is left, if any, until it is fully assembled. How fortunate for them, for the icy hinterlands are but a stone's throw away from their current location. But the knowledge had come at a price. While the Allies were embroiled in the Battle of Cape Town, the Epsilon Navy had launched a surprise assault on the Ascension Island, where the Paradox engine's backup battery was being charged. The attack came too suddenly, and while emergency teleportation was immediately initiated, it was unable to finish before the battery was destroyed. A devastating loss. Without the backup battery, their strategy of staying on the ocean indefinitely would no longer work. And should the engine need to recharge its systems, it'd have to power down completely, which would then leave it defenseless and vulnerable to Epsilon counterattacks. The Allies had planned to destroy the Zaire amplifier with a fully recharged Paradox engine following their assault on Cape Town. But with the loss of the battery, as well as the information they've gathered about the Epsilon HQ, there just isn't enough time left. This has been their toughest battle yet, and it took nearly their combined might to eke out a victory. One shudders to think what horrors await them in the Antarctic, but heavy is the burden that rests upon them. As the last beacon of hope for the free world, the expedition must strike the madman at the heart before his diabolical device dooms all of them forever.
Establishing battlefield control. Stand by.
Time freeze is ready.
In 3, 2,
It's time to
1.
stop.
We don't have much time, Commander. Build up your base in Antarctica quickly before Yuri can overrun your position.
Here, at the frigid gates of the underworld, the combined forces of the Allied nations make landfall to begin their daring descent into the Devil's Lair. All of their remaining forces are en route to Antarctica now, with the entire fleet making its way through the Weddell Sea. If Yuri's preparing an even stronger mind control weapon, no new base they've established will hold for long anywhere. It's all or nothing. What they couldn't shove into the transports, they warped onto the engine itself, bringing every last man possible for a full-scale assault on Epsilon's shoreline positions. Preliminary scans has led to a discovery most serendipitous to the Allies, as chunks of the Antarctic ice shelf are beginning to melt and detach, most likely due to a strange energy field emanating from the Epsilon HQ. The disintegration of the Fusionarong ice shelf in particular allows the Allies to push in much further with their navy. With a backup battery gone, they will need all the forces they can use to lessen the burden on the engine itself. Ideally, the use of Time Freeze and the Chronosphere should be sparse for the battles to come, but now is not the time to be skimping. Yuri's forces in the southern hemisphere, alongside their mind-controlled puppets, are now heading towards Antarctica to reinforce their HQ. If they don't make a solid dent with their first strike, the Allies would only be drowned out in an endless battle of attrition. The Epsilon forward base alone is already more fortified than any they've encountered thus far. Even with a time freeze right off the bat, the Allies could only manage to secure the beachhead. A massive aerial counterattack immediately followed, led directly by an ear column. Another time freeze. The driving force of the Allied nations cannot afford to take damage so early in the campaign. They must push forward, whatever it takes. The Epsilon Air Armada was down before they could harm a single Allied soldier. But their death was not to be in vain, for it had steered the Allies' attention away from the more vital fortifications. Layers upon layers of defenses remained, including not only several psychic dominators, but also a new type of defense called the Dibberk Nest, using psychic sensors as guidance to launch swarms of interceptors that can overwhelm any aerial attacks. Both of these pose a serious threat to the engine from afar, leaving only one option for the advancing Allies. The battle was decided in an instant. Frozen by the effects of time freeze, the Epsilon forces became the target of a ruthless blitzkrieg by the Allies, regaining their senses only to find their most critical installations reduced to rubble before their eyes. Taking back the momentum, the Allies soon overran the outer defenses, reaching further into the continent. A strike force led by Tanya and Siegfried was sent forth, dismantling the Deberk nests on the path ahead before yet another time freeze wiped out the survivors. Push forward, march ahead. The Allies cannot afford to stop now, for there will be no rest for the wicked today. Reaching the Pensacola Mountains, the Allies soon came upon the next major Epsilon fortification. Unbeknownst to them, however, Yuri himself is located within the base at this very moment. Their breakneck speed surprised even the great leader, who's currently finishing a piece of hybrid technology within the old chronosphere. With the creation absent from the battle, busy engaging the invaders at the Weddell Sea still, it's likely his defenses won't hold out against the Allies as well. Although he could theoretically teleport Libra here, it would be foolish to risk another complication with the CAS at this critical hour. All hopes are placed on the proselyte now, preparing an impressive defense alongside their fellow commanders, whose bases are built on top of reinforced concrete. Such a massive base will surely delay the Allies long enough until... Barrows? Who was in charge of logistics? In the blink of an eye, the Allies came crashing down like a thunderstorm, destroying the bases on the concrete slabs before claiming the grounds as their own.
Your efforts have been amusing up to now. But if you destroy this base, I will destroy you.
Game's over, Yuri. You're about to lose.
There was simply no recourse for the Epsilon, their forces falling like flies before the raging storm. Following their chrono strikes, the Allies made landfall in the north, quickly working through the defenders on that side as well. Elite HQ forces are en route to reinforce their efforts, but at its current pace, the engine will reach the old chronosphere first. As the section of the base under their command was not within the range of the initial time freeze, the proselyte took the time to amass an army of anti-air units. In the worst case, they only need to hold the line until Yuri finishes his work. The rest doesn't matter. Additional submarines were dispatched from the deeper naval yards, keen to make their stand against the tide. The narrow waterways and treacherous terrain here make it difficult for the Allies to fight at their full strength, lending the proselyte a chance to set up ambushes with great success. But the inevitable approach of the Paradox engine put them back on the edge. Even the Irkalas at their disposal could not hold a candle to the engine, as these HQ versions are significantly less refined than the one deployed in London. Still, with the anti-air units they've produced, it seems they could just barely stop the engine in its tracks. As long as...
The Allied perseverance continues to vex me. No matter. They have only succeeded in delaying the inevitable. I finished my work here. It should be out of their reach, but Libra must find it without my help. The Soviets are coming for me.
Let the troops flow.
Kill them all!
The enemy is prepared for your assault, sir. Our operatives report that Yuri has more than one base in the area. We are extremely vulnerable here. Good luck.
The Lunar Task Force has made its landing, seizing one of Epsilon's weaker outposts as their foothold on the moon. The amount of forces here far exceeds the Soviet general's expectation. It seems Yuri has constructed a large installation within the Sea of Vapors, with enough equipment to allow his troops here to launch attacks anywhere across the globe. Being the megalomaniac he is, it is possible that Yuri has set this base up as a throne, from which he plans to assume control of the world after activating the global psychic amplifier network he's trying to build. As such, there is a high likelihood that he is right here, right now. If so, then this place shall become the burial site of the insidious traitor. But as fiery as their spirits are, the moon's unique properties has introduced many complications to the mission. While most of their armored division is still available, the lack of oxygen deprives the general of access to their usual selection of infantry, leaving only the soldiers trained to fight with full-body suits, now modified and fitted for the dangers of space combat. The paper-thin atmosphere also means their air force is rendered obsolete, a problem that the Epsilon need not worry about, as their aircrafts were designed to be compatible with space combat in the first place. In fact, they've even developed a new type of high-speed Deberk here, swooping in to mind control several high-value targets and escaping before they are overwhelmed by anti-air fire. While the cyborgs are immune to such shenanigans, the presence of magnetrons, as well as strange gravitic flux in the region, makes it hard for them to exude their full strength. But not all is doom and gloom for the Soviets. With more blueprints from the Chinese facilities deciphered, the Soviets are now ready to deploy something exceptional, a Centurion siege crawler, missing the portable Iron Curtain generator, but wields just as much firepower as the original. This, coupled with the Scud launchers, whose effective range has extended massively as a result of the moon's lower gravity, has allowed the Soviets to push through the Epsilon defenses with ease. Expecting to face an army of psychics on the moon, the Soviet general was puzzled to see their enemies employ little use of such trickeries. Instead, they came across a type of enhanced brute, far tougher than the ones on the surface, accompanied by new UFOs, as well as these Gehenna platforms. Only their Debris launchers had been replaced with the pyrokinetic beam turret. It wasn't until the Soviets had reached the main base did they discover a super soldier. Not a psychic, mind you, but a cyborg. His weapons packed quite a punch against the Soviet tanks, but even he could not survive an encounter with the first dog on the moon, whose iron claws and metal teeth ripped the super soldier apart. This unstoppable crew of fighters trampled over the remaining defenses, and soon razed the Lunar Command Center to the ground.
You there, check the database.
The battle was over. The Soviet general had claimed the Epsilon lunar base for themselves, but rather than answering their questions regarding Yuri's psychics, this expedition to the moon has only given them more puzzles to solve. A large containment site was found within the base, which was weirdly left in a state of disrepair, almost as a memento of an experiment gone horribly wrong. The supposed super soldiers they expected to encounter were nowhere to be seen as well. None except the one defeated by Chitskoi, a cyborg at that, which could have serious implications. Epsilon has not been observed to use cyborgs in battle even once thus far. But if Yuri truly has succeeded in replicating the Soviet cybernetic research, they'll need to be ready to fight cyborgs in the future as well. The victory came almost too easily. No wonder, for Yuri himself wasn't here to defend his throne. But this victory turned out more important than any other in their war against Epsilon. With the lunar base under their control, the Soviets will be able to strike anywhere on Earth. Conveniently, the data from the ruins of Yuri's command center has revealed his true whereabouts. Moskva. This is the chance they've been looking for. Killing him will end his regime once and for all. They must prepare for the coming conflict. We're in the endgame now.
Blinded by revenge as they are, however, it will be easy to manipulate them. But we cannot face them all here, proselyte. That is why I must leave you to the defense of my ultimate creation. Only I can deal with Volkov now, and only I can control the hands that will keep them occupied.